I mean, bro, like, I mean, these are major, major, major big cities, right? Brandon Johnson, and I'm just being straight up. I've listened to this guy enough. I've been around him enough to know he's a very intelligent man.
It's true.
He's not a dummy by any means at all. I think he has a listening problem.
The Crucial Convo podcast.
You could be anywhere if you're on this channel. Thank you for tuning in.
To the Crucial Convo podcast.
Welcome back to the Crucial Convo podcast. You are tuned in with your gracious host, Kojo of Free Air. I got my man, Tony Briscoe, the God on the podcast, and we're gonna have some conversations. This last year, we're almost at the end of 2025, and I laugh because I find what's happening in America.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because there's so many polarizing things that are happening. So
Yeah.
Democrat Republicans have turned into a form of a cult in a way, or the idea of what they are. So we were talking offline, and we were talking about presidents. We were talking about Donald Trump, and I've always told people I did vote for Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? I did.
Ah!
I
did. And it's your vote. Like, I respect people's right to vote for who they want to vote for and vote for their interests at the end of the day.
Well, let me say this: a lot of people, I think, a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump, who are black, or people of color, and had voted Democrat in the past, might not actually say it. There are people online who do say it, but I think there's a lot of people when they're amongst other people at the cookout or whatever, they're not really saying anything because there's like a big, So Donald Trump, I don't think he's someone that you vote for and you necessarily are going to be like, oh, I love everything he does. I think there are some people who are very cultish with him because, for instance, like in the past, let's just say, for example, you have voted. Let's go back to Obama. You voted for John McCain, which I think you would have been crazy to do that. But did you vote for John McCain?
I did vote for John McCain.
No, you didn't.
I did vote for John McCain. I did.
Hold on.
I did.
You telling me in 2008 you voted for John McCain?
I did vote for John McCain, bro.
And you looking at me saying, looking at me.
Hey, bro, I voted for George Bush too. So, man, I've been in the ringer with my people for a long time, dog.
I'm gonna let you slide on George Bush.
You gonna let me slide on that one?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. George Bush, honestly, back then, I'll be honest, I was like maybe, I don't know, 21, 22.
Yeah.
I probably would have voted for George Bush only because I knew his name and he was, his father was a president. I didn't know anything about Al Gore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Bush had the name recognition, and to me, I'm like, whatever. But I didn't vote in that election. But tell me why you voted for John McCain.
Man, I would have to go back into the crates because I think one of the things that I was challenged on was his views on Dr. King. That was just one instance. I think it was just some military policies that aligned closer to me with McCain at the time. I can't just lay it out. At a time, I had a sheet and I had the reasons and I measured them up and I laid them out, and that's where I stood on that. And it's funny because
I'm asking the wrong question. Why didn't you vote for Barack Obama the first time?
So I don't think I didn't have an issue. I voted for Barack the second time. For me, I wasn't necessarily caught up in the hype, right? I'm still a very conservative voter for the most part, and I've crossed my ticket, plenty of times, like,
Okay.
And this goes back. I was not a fan of Bill Clinton either, bro. So this is early on. I think he weakened our military. That was my personal opinion, and that was part of my mental mindset back then. Even with voting for McCain, my mindset was, I was fresh out of the Navy, just 4 years, so my mindset was really still kind of Man, I'm not gonna be even ashamed to say brainwashed, bro. Like I was still gun ho, straight military, tear them down.
And
But
what years were you in the Navy? What years were those?
I was in the Navy from 1989 all the way through 2004. I was in the reserves. My first time
Okay,
doing active duty was after 9/11,
got you.
and so I served 20 months on active duty after that. I had plenty of reasons, man, and I always loved Barack. I even donated to Barack's campaign and didn't vote for him. So it was I was in this. I think I was just in this weird place in my life where I was just having so many issues with the Democratic Party, and I didn't see John McCain as a threat necessarily to our people. What almost made me vote for Obama was John McCain, actually,
Hmm.
when he took
Okay.
up for him in one of his town halls.
Really?
And I'm like, man, if McCain could put all his stuff aside and defend this dude in one of his town halls where people's like, well, he's Muslim, and he just checked people. He was like, first of all,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with being a Muslim.
Right.
Second of all, the man said he's a Christian. So it was like, I just think I had some things going on in my head at the time. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying? And that's why I went with McCain. Um, Romney, yeah, I voted for Obama, dog. Like,
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
just,
Romney.
it was no contest to me. I'm like, even though Romney did slam him in that first debate, I mean, Barack took a whooping, but Barack came back with that black cool, bruh.
He did.
And so again, I have my challenges with McCain, but that's the thing for me. I've had challenges with Democrats and Republicans
Right.
in every election. None of them fit my mold perfectly, right?
Okay.
I'm more aligned to my faith, but I'm also aware enough that people like this current administration will use faith as a cover for racism. And so I've always split my vote. In Illinois, I split my vote. Presidentially, I split my vote between who's speaking the language that lines up with one I believe in the direction my people are going to go.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask
Yeah,
you before we go to the present day. I'm
yeah,
curious because honestly, and this may sound idealistic, I assumed everybody in 2008, for the most part, who was black, voted for Barack Obama. I really, it's interesting. It's so interesting for me to hear you say you voted for John McCain because I do remember back then a lot of people I knew who were Democrat were like the only complaint they had about Barack at that time is they were saying he didn't have the experience, and some of them wanted Clinton
yeah,
initially. But it's really interesting to hear that. So paralleling that, where you were able to look at John McCain and say, okay, I'm gonna vote for him over Barack, and then I guess I got to ask you, the last election, you voted for Kamala Harris.
absolutely.
Okay, so
And I'm gonna lay it out straight.
So
Trump,
I'm not gonna cut you off because I really
go
want to
ahead,
ask you straight up. So
go ahead.
I honestly, and here's the thing: there's been so many, narratives about if you did not vote for, if you did not vote Democrat or Kamala Harris, you were misogynistic. You didn't, or you're like this ultra MAGA Trump lover and all this stuff. And I honestly, to your point, when you talk about crossing party lines, for me, I never really cared about party that much either. I kind of look at what's the choices I have in front of me. So to me, I'm like, either you're going to vote or not vote. But if you are going to vote, okay, what are the choices in front of you? So I got to ask you straight up, because I'll tell you why I didn't vote for her. But I want
Hmm.
to understand, what did you see in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Well, let me ask you like this first. Trump was never an option for me.
Okay.
I didn't care about debates. I didn't care about none of that stuff. Moved me. Trump was never an option for me. Um, when it comes to Kamala, I think the things that Vice President Harris had to deal with were crazy, idiotic, and to consider that woman unintelligent, to consider her a thorn in the side of black men, where she was state's attorney. I believe she was state's attorney, whatever role she had, district attorney or state's attorney, whichever
Yeah, I
role
think
she
this
had
DA.
there.
Yeah,
Attorney general. I can't think of what role she
I
had.
think it was DA, if I'm not mistaken.
DA, yeah,
And
district attorney. And so Trump just wasn't an option for me. And so when I measured up them, and I watched every debate that they had. Measuring them up, I find her to be way more intelligent than Donald Trump. I found her to be way more honest than Donald Trump. And I'm not saying she was a flawless woman. Again, none of them are flawless, right? But for her and for first of all, I don't think Tim Walz was a good pick for a running mate.
Yeah, no,
I don't. I don't
definitely
think
not.
he had enough experience. Period. To be able to tussle when you had to tussle with Donald Trump. Nah, I don't think. I don't think he was the right pick for her. I think he was a safe pick,
And if you
and I
look what's
think
happening
that's
in Minnesota right now, yeah,
yeah, and I think that's the issue that people had with that. But I also give grace. I mean, I had people at my church. Oh man, she's not black. She ain't turned black until she was running for office. And Donald Trump said the same thing. Trump was just never an option for me. I find him a very, and I had big hopes when he took office. I remember writing a blog about it. Hey, let's just see how this thing plays out, and it showed how it played out.
so just for clarity, he wasn't an option based on the first term. You're saying?
He wasn't an option the first term for
Oh, the
me, and
first
he
term
definitely
either.
was not
Okay,
an option the second term.
got you.
I don't think the Justice Department was weaponized against him. I think he's a criminal. I think he's a crook. I think he has shysted people out of money, just
Hmm.
like his university did. You
Hmm.
know, and so, but the thing about him is, and people get mad at me when I say it, my people, but I don't care. Donald Trump is a marketing genius. Once that dude finds an end, he knows how to market it, he knows how to use it, and he knows how to level it.
Hmm.
And those the advantage for him.
Yeah.
And so when it came to Kamala, like I have a very close friend who's a correspondent in DC. I talk to her all the time because she is my intellectual, so she knows how to. Hey, Tone, I'm gonna give you both sides of this thing, straight down from this administration to this administration. She's really good at that. I mean, she's all over from Fox to CNN. She was on Abby Phillips. She's a highly intellectual sister,
Hmm.
and so I lean on her a lot to say, hey, I'm not feeling this person on this. I
Okay.
do think Kamala made some mistakes that Donald Trump didn't make, and I think that's what. And let's not get it twisted. People are so disenfranchised with the Democratic Party, but I think her mistake. This is what killed her, and I knew what killed her in the election when she went on the View.
That was the final nail in the coffin for sure.
And I told my wife, I said, babe, that just lost her this election because I think you really had people who were ready to swing. They were still on the edge. They were tired of the Democratic Party, but they were on that cusp you were talking about earlier, right before the pre-show. And then when they asked that question, and why they even asked that question, I have no idea. Like this is what I'm saying, man. Like the
Been needed to
game
ask
is
that
so
question.
the game is so rigged sometimes, bro. Why would you ask that woman that when you know what she's up against, having to honor the current president who's in office? Why would you ask her when she do anything different?
You killing me right now, Tony. You killing me right now. You killing me because that was a softball question, and I think that was the nail in the coffin. But
Yes.
I think that before that it was getting worse. So I always tell people, I'm like, Kamala Harris, you know, she was not a good candidate. She didn't talk to anybody for 30 days. That was the first the first red flag for me because honestly, and I'm going to just say this for me, I think a lot of people fall into this category. I knew of her, but I didn't know anything about her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
So but so here's the thing for me. And again, I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Prior to her going on the View, she didn't speak to anybody for 30 days and her quote unquote policies that she had, that she was, her plans if she was going to become president. For me, I knew they were actually fantasies, or not even fantasies. They just were that she was throwing things out that didn't make sense to me. So when she talked about, for instance, so Donald Trump was smart in the sense that Donald Trump didn't put stuff out there that wasn't palatable and didn't sound, and he didn't put out stuff out that didn't sound, he didn't say things that sounded unrealistic. So for instance, she said she was going to build 300, the government was going to build 300,000 new homes in her first term, which is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just something that government isn't going to do. It's never been a time that government's going to do that. If government was even going to do that, she had to be specific as to how. So it was like she was she tried to do the hope and change thing, but when Barack was running, the hope and change thing that he was doing, he still did it in a smart way. Barack didn't say anything that was fairy tale-ish. So I think that she underestimated where America is. And I think the things that she said, I'm sure some people believed it, but to me, I'm like, it's a red flag because so Donald Trump said economy, immigration, and those were real things. She said we're going to build 300,000 new homes. We're going to give
Yeah.
grants to black men. If you want to, there was something where she was going to do something with marijuana. I can't remember the specifics of the marijuana thing. And then she was going to supposedly give $50,000 grant to black men or black business. There just weren't things that were real. And she also said she was going to raise corporate tax. And again, that was one of those things where I'm like, where America is. She wouldn't touch immigration, which was dangerous. Then they tried to make they tried to make abortion the centerpiece. And I was like, this is going out of the window. So I think, to your point, a lot of people who are particularly Christians,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that when they make abortion the centerpiece? In Chicago, they had the abortion truck. Now, it wasn't the Democratic Party per se, but the Planned Parenthood abortion truck right around the corner from the DNC convention. So, and they tried to make that the centerpiece for a while to say, you know what, they're going to take away your rights to have an abortion. And I was telling people, I'm like, yo, this is not going to work, because at the same time, as you know, Chicago being a sanctuary city, I mean, these are things that people are dealing with. Immigration, however you see it, it
Yeah.
is an issue. We can't pretend like it doesn't exist. So for me, I was like, she just was pretending things didn't exist. So I think she had a reasonable chance to beat Trump, but she tried to pretend. So I say all that to say that when she went on The View, that was just a culmination of her pretending things didn't exist. Because for her to say I wouldn't do anything different, obviously you're pretending like there's no problem.
I don't think so, bro.
No?
I don't. I think, first of all, we have to deal with the Democratic Party and their decision to let Joe Biden even hint at running again. I
Sure.
think that's the first mistake. I think as soon as he took office, they should have been strategizing and planning for a way to exit that man after his first term,
Yeah.
particularly for health reasons, right? I think that's the main thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, all presidents bow to corporations.
Absolutely.
When you look at donations, man, I found a site, I think it's opensecrets.org. I
Mm-hmm.
literally lined up from the last elections all donations to Kamala Harris campaign and
Mm-hmm.
all donations to Donald Trump's campaign, right? President Trump's campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the same people are donating on both sides. Big wigs.
Mm-hmm.
BlackRock owns New York, bro.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
were donating on both sides. And so when I look at things like this, it lets me know. It's funny because there's an old clip of Eddie Murphy talking to Arsenio Hall about why he doesn't vote. And Arsenio was pressing him. And Eddie was just like, man, I don't get caught up in that stuff, man. But at the end of the day, I think for Kamala Harris, I talk to black men, Christian black men,
Mm-hmm.
who say she's not black.
Okay.
She's not intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
That God would not want a woman running the country. Like, this is the kind of rhetoric that was coming out of my people's mouths, man, talking about Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she laid out the blueprint of everything this Putinbauer was going to do if he got back into office again. Right? And so when you look at the things that she said was going to happen and look at them come to pass, how does this dude go from not knowing anything about Project 2025 to having Stephen Miller as part of his executive leadership team? Behind, like how does he go from not just saying openly that he knew nothing about Project 2025, and then you've got people involved in Project 2025 running things and writing policy? So that's why I look at presidents as they're a figurehead,
Sure.
and they're a figurehead of the people who put them in office, just like Barack Obama was. It was no different. If black people think the black folk got Barack in office, we are seriously delusional. Seriously delusional.
We are in a lot of ways, because before we got online, that was what we were talking about, and I was saying that it's interesting because, and I always tell people that when it comes to presidents or politicians in general, but just presidents, for example, what they do and how we react to what they do depends on whether we like them or not. So
Yes.
when I was telling a lot of people when immigration started becoming a conversation, I was telling, like I said, I got killed by all the panelists on a previous episode about 10 months ago, where I said, well, do you know that Barack Obama deported more people than Donald Trump did? And it's hard for people, even when they see the figures, it's hard for them to accept it because they're like, it can't be real. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I did vote for Barack. I think he generally was a good president, but I said the reality is that he did some despicable things too. And you would have asked me what? And I was like, well, one of the things, and it's not just Barack Obama, but Libya was a great example.
No,
Um,
that's Barack, bro. I ain't putting that. I don't even put that on Hillary back. That's on Barack, bro.
well, yes,
Period.
I was going to say Hillary too. So, but people look at Hillary and Barack as great people. Same thing with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton did plenty of things that weren't great, but he did some things that were great. So I think that Donald Trump is one of the only presidents to me, and it's partly his fault as to how he carries himself and the things he says. And I always tell people I concede to that, but I think that I don't know if he's any better or worse per se,
He's worse.
relative to other presidents.
He's worse.
Well, here's the thing.
What has he done good? Talk to me.
Well, let me say this before I'll tell you what I think he's done good, and it may be a
Okay.
weird, distorted way of looking at it. You might think, but
Yeah.
what I would say thus far, Trump hasn't actually bombed and killed anybody. Barack killed and bombed a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? A lot of
Drone
people.
strikes. Yeah.
You know, in
Drone
drone
strikes.
strikes.
Mhm.
So we have this way of just kind of ignoring it because we know, especially in the black community, we just love Barack Obama and he could do no wrong, and we just ignore the fact that they went to liberate Libya, and Libya is a much worse off country now than it was when Muammar Gaddafi was in there.
I
Um,
mean, so was Iraq and Afghanistan, though, right?
exactly, and same thing with George Bush in Iraq and Afghanistan. But people acknowledge what was done, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they blame George Bush for it and Dick Cheney. Obviously, most people, I've called them war criminals, but Barack, yeah, Libya wasn't some long drawn off war, but it was a country we got rid of Muammar Gaddafi. And it's interesting because before the Arab Spring, so Gaddafi went from bad guy, really bad guy, terrorist, all that stuff in the 80s, and then up around after 9/11, and I'm sure you know this as well. After 9/11, Muammar Gaddafi changed his whole persona in the whole
Yep.
international community, and he was
Yes, he
cool with
did.
everybody for a while. He was
Yes, he
coming to the
was.
United Nations, coming to New
Yes, he
York,
was.
and right after more, and famously, even he had loaned Minister Farrakhan $5 million, um, interest free, to the Nation of Islam. And Muammar Gaddafi also, and I'm not saying he was a great guy, a perfect guy, but he loaned money to a lot of African leaders. So Muammar Gaddafi, with all the money Libya had, he was generous with the money. And from what I remember, they blamed him for Pan Am Flight 103 and all of that, and he
Yep.
was the bad
Yep.
guy boogeyman. After 9/11, we started focusing on Saddam Hussein and obviously Osama bin Laden. Muammar Gaddafi, I don't remember what year it was, but it was post 9/11.
Hmm.
They invited him to come to New York to United Nations, and he got up there and talked about how a lot of African nations need reparations, and he went back on.
Target right there. Target. Just
Yeah,
they could have just put the infrared beam on him as soon as he said it. They could have just put the infrared beam on him, man.
absolutely. And then he became. Now George Bush and them didn't deal with that because they were busy. But when Barack came in 2008, right? Within 3 years, in 2011, we had the Arab Spring. So once Tunisia went down,
Hmm.
Egypt went down, and then they said this is a perfect time to get Muammar Gaddafi. So this was something done. Now, and like I said, my whole point is that Libya is now, people were killed. The country is way worse off. Their wealth has been, I don't know what the oil wealth, how it functions now, but it's nothing like it was before. Before, when Muammar Gaddafi was in there was literally no homelessness in the country. I'm not saying it's perfect, but everybody
No,
had a
but
place to
yeah,
live and eat
it
and
don't have to be
healthcare.
perfect.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
nowhere is perfect. This man built out their entire irrigation system, bro.
Yeah,
Like, how do you do that across a country like that, bro? Over time, right? That's putting valued resources together, right?
100%.
He wanted to give Minister Farrakhan $1 billion,
Yep.
from my understanding, for black people in America.
Yes. And
And the government would not allow
they
it,
would
right?
not
So
allow it.
we'll take a $400 jet from Qatar, but the administration would not allow $1 billion to be given to Minister Farrakhan. That's all the rep. It ain't that we don't even number a billion. He could have gave each black person $1 million in this country, and we'd have never asked anybody for anything again as long as we live.
But you know what? But to your point, see, here's the thing. Barack Obama was part of that not happening. He's not the
Absolutely.
sole person, but he's part of that not happening. So when black Americans or black people living in America feel like, well, Obama was great, he was great. But it's like, also the flip side of it is, yes, you do like him, we like him, but we have a hard time acknowledging the wrongs that he did. And
I don't. I don't. The thing, bro, I don't think most people know the wrongs that he did. Let's
you're
talk
right,
about the average citizen, right? The average
absolutely.
citizen is not, and it's when I researched Kamala, her campaign, the same as Trump campaign. I had a website. I pulled all this stuff up. I would look at these things and just take notes of what they describing. All that stuff is smoke and mirrors to me whenever I see it, right? I just know, like, because I believe once you get in office, you get that little black book and you say, hey, this is how the country is actually run. And you're
Right.
like, and I think what Trump is doing is like, give me that black book. I don't care about that. This is
Yeah,
my
yeah,
show
exactly.
now, right? So
Exactly.
he's dismantled what we consider good politics. As far as I'm concerned, he's a shadow. He's a reincarnation of Andrew Jackson, who was the inventor of dirty politics. Him and his wife were relentless in history, bro. With Andrew Jackson, just a monster of a man, and he's shadowing this dude. And that's just my personal opinion. I think the thing about Libya that's really disgusting when you talk about Libya, and I believe I saw a clip. If somebody asked President, I'm gonna try to find it. Don't hold me to this, but I
Mhm.
believe in an interview somebody asked him what's one of his biggest regrets, and he mentioned Libya. I'm gonna
Who?
try to see if I can
Barack
find that
Obama?
clip. Yeah, he mentioned Libya. He mentioned Libya. It's one of
Mhm.
his regrets, and that's the humanity that I see in bro. But I don't consider any of these cats perfect. None of them. I don't care who it is. None of them will be perfect ever. But the thing about it's not just about the overthrow of Libya. It's what they did to Gaddafi. They sodomized that man with a rusted pipe, stripped him naked,
Yeah.
had him on camera, bro, and they sodomized that man
Yeah.
with a pipe.
And
That's an American permanent stamp stain on the presidency of Barack Obama.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and they made sure you saw it. And the thing of it is you just made a 2 points. So I'm gonna answer your question as far as what Trump has did that's good, and
Yeah,
also to your point about the average citizen not knowing. I think the reason why the average citizen does not know is because, and I'm talking about the average black citizen now for a minute, because
yeah,
I think the reason why we don't know is because emotionally we like the person. That's why I think people think everything Trump does is bad, right? And I think that it's automatic. So it's almost like they don't know what Trump did. People don't know what bad stuff Trump did, but they just feel like it's automatically bad. The same way they don't know what Barack Obama did, and they're like, well, whatever he did had to be good or it had to be done. And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, if you ask me, pound for pound, I like Barack Obama a lot more. He's been a plus. However, he did some things while being in office as far as deportations, as far as bombings, coups like we're talking about, or helping to, overthrow a country, whatever you want to call it. He took place in all of these things that if Donald Trump was doing it, which deportations, for example, he's doing, we're pissed off. If Donald Trump right now invaded Venezuela, for example, let's say he did Venezuela like Barack did Libya, everybody would know about it. We'd all be mad about it. People who don't like him, especially, would be mad, and they say, "Well, you went in. Who cares the problems that Venezuela has? You got to leave them alone. You're going in there. The CIA is going in there, helping to overthrow them with a crew, and then whatever happens with that country afterwards, they're going to pin that on Trump." To this day, when I look at Libya, I just watched something on Libya very recently as to where
Hmm.
they are now. Most people don't put that on Barack Obama. They don't put anything on Barack Obama. The only thing they put on Barack Obama is positivity. I'm not mad at it, but the reason why I bring it up is that it's important to put things in context with him, because Barack Obama to me is like the opposite of Donald Trump. Barack Obama, for all intents and purposes, is one of the most liked presidents, and
Liked,
Trump is
smart, intelligent. Like, where else you want to go? Best dressed. We name
all
any
of it,
category, bro.
all
We
of
gonna.
it.
He doesn't. This dude doesn't hold a torch.
No, no,
But before you
right.
get into what he
I'm
did,
with you. I totally
yeah,
agree. I voted
yeah,
for Barack twice, so I again, I think that it's all about whether it's a net positive. So
hmm,
no one's going to be perfect, you know.
yeah,
So, but I say that to say that here's where I come to present day. I think where Kamala would have been bad if she'd been president. My personal opinion is that Kamala would have avoided some of the problems we have in this country, right? And I think she was clearly avoiding them with hope and change and just feel good stuff. Maybe she would have got in and tried to figure it out, but there's a couple of things that we have to deal with in this country. Immigration is definitely an issue. How to deal with it is another, is, we can talk about that. But immigration, people acting like I talk to people about immigration, around the time of the election and thereafter. And a lot of people, some people I talked to were like, no, there is no immigration issue. There's some people who are convinced there is no immigration issue. There's people who are convinced that the borders were not, yeah, they were open, but how do you know they're telling the truth of how many people came into the country? I mean, there's just this thing, unless people could see it, they're like, oh, they're against brown people and all these different constructs. And I'm like, no, there actually is a real issue. So I think that what Trump's administration has done inadvertently, to me, the two things that people are at least talking about, because again, I think that the average citizen is at least talking about immigration, and I think they're talking about the economy and how governments are spending money, federally and locally, you know, and I think those are issues that are extremely important. Just for
hmm,
example, and I'll let you rock. I'm just want to
yeah.
just bring it to a point,
Go ahead.
is
Yeah,
that
take
I
your time.
think part of this, the awakening of people paying attention to what governments are spending, because literally that's really the issue. I'm not saying that Donald Trump has been the answer, but I think his presidency has brought forth that conversation, a conversation that Kamala Harris presidency would have smothered, and people just wouldn't have paid attention. Chicago, for example, the deficit, how Chicago's being run, Brandon Johnson, New York, same issues. Um, Other places, Boston,
Hmm.
Seattle, there are issues as far as how, and then smaller towns, you know, we could get into, Dalton, Illinois, you know what I'm saying? Where I used to live, where we from. We could get into Harvey, who has huge problems right now. They damn near bankrupt, So the conversation as to how government is run, I think, has come into play, and I think it's become, yeah, not everybody's talking about it, but it's part of the conscious conversation of everyday people, which I think is a good thing. So that's the thing I think has happened.
Well, I'll say this because Barack Obama, I think, is an excellent example of what a president should look like, with flaws and all. because he's not perfect at all. And again, I've shared these things. I remember bringing up the drone strikes as his administration was doing, and people were running me through the mud because you know what? They're not informed,
Right.
and they don't seek to be informed. Right?
Right.
When from a military man, I've had to, especially when we had a veterans ministry, man, I was into everything for veterans, just trying to understand. Like there was a documentary about the pilots who had PTSD from the Obama administration from dropping them drones, bro. Like it was crazy. But that's just like when you got the PTSD when you're dealing with Iraq and Afghanistan and things like that. Like sending our troops into harm's way with ill-fated equipment without no armor, nothing that can use sonar detection to blow up IEDs before you even hit to them. Like there's been no advancements in certain things to activate and resonate that when you're in a battlefield like that. So definitely neglect on both sides. I can't say anything. Well, let's take Donald Trump immigration policies, right? I don't have an issue with him going after criminals who are here. Now, you can say that everybody who is in the United States illegally is a criminal. I'm cool with you saying that, but we know what we mean when we say those who have criminal records and who've been arrested. As far as I'm concerned, it's an automatic deportation. Bye, don't come back. If we catch you here again, you may not make it back home ever. So I'm cool with that. But this is not what this administration is doing. So he does really good at telling people what they feel like they need to hear. But we're talking about a man, and I want you to imagine your wife is a reporter covering the White House, covering Air Force One, and he calls her piggy and he calls her stupid.
Yeah.
Like this is what, so people are like, well, that's just how. No, that's a representation of the United States of America, and that's who this guy is representing. So it's cool that you say I'm going to come after criminals. You've been arresting United States citizens. That's what your ICE agents have done, including the one they just arrested in Florida who was trying to solicit sex from a minor. Right?
Yeah.
Like this is what this administration has brought in. But just like you have those black folks who may have come out of the woodwork to vote for Barack Obama just because he was black, this is also the same cinder block. And you remember cinder blocks, when you lift them up, all of the cinder block looked beautiful. But when you lifted it up, you saw the worms and the bugs and all this other stuff. That's what the cinder block of racism has been lifted up since this dude ran for office. And so you've got a subset of people who will do any and everything to support this guy's administration. And I think that's what's happening. The insurrection is a perfect example of this, where that was the one day blue lives did not matter in America. 4 police officers committed suicide within 4 months, within 4 to 6 months of that insurrection that took place at the Capitol. This dude has ushered in a level of racism, and we've seen it face to face presently with folks just going after folks. A brother just got shot, I think, in South Carolina. He was jogging, and a dude pulled up in his car. It's on tape. Shot a brother while he was jogging. Yeah, I did it because he was black. Like, that's the element that this administration, in my opinion, has brought out. So when we talk about him doing good things, him going after illegal immigrants is a great thing. The way he's doing it is piss poor, un-American, and it's dehumanizing. And so that's the difference between him and Barack Obama. Not that the camera is on Donald Trump. President Barack Obama made the same message. He did a press conference and he said, if you are in this country illegally, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we find some great method. But if you are a criminal, he said, know this, the United States government is coming for you. And that's exactly what he did. Now, did other people get swept up in that sweep? I'm sure they did. I got a friend, bro, and this is the other side, what I'm going to talk about. Not everybody is getting treated the same.
Yeah.
With this administration when deportation comes into place. And I think that's the miscommunication. It's like, oh, everything he's doing is bad. No, a lot of bad is being done. I got a friend she's from Ghana, bro. She just learned when her dad died last year that she was not a United States citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. That was this year. She just learned this year.
Mm-hmm.
I've known her since my childhood. I'm like, what do you mean she's not a what? I would have never have thought that, but her parents never told her. Mm. So ICE came to her job looking for her, but she was off work that day. See, that's the thing. They know where to find people, bro. They have tapped into some information and some privacy parts of this. Like the DACA recipient list has become an ICE administration hit list.
Yeah.
That's problematic when these folks have certain protections. So when we talk about due process being for those on American soil, be you illegal or be you not, we're talking about the bounds of the Constitution that are now being slowly stripped away piece by piece and brick by brick. So she went to immigration on her own and let them know what was up. Now, you would think we have the cameras in the face. Oh man, they shipping my girl out of the country. No, they were like, hey, she's not even allowed to leave the country, even for vacation, until they work out her immigration status. But that's the story that's not being told.
Yeah,
Not
there's
everybody
definitely
going to immigration is running into that kind of ICE problem. There
right.
are a lot of people who are, but there are some who are not.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely, to your point. I mean, there's a lot of my wife's cousin's husband went through some stuff too, um, and this is what I say. I'll say that and I said this to my wife last week. We were talking about this, and I said, you know, one of the issues with Donald Trump is that the things that he is doing good are also being overshadowed or muddled in with the things. So some of the things he's doing good are going to be overshadowed by the things he's doing bad, meaning that even when he is doing something that he should be doing, the rhetoric and the way he goes about it overshadows it. So you can't really see some of the good from the bad, right? So
What's
just
I'm still waiting to hear the good though. That's what I'm waiting to hear.
well, for example, actually, I would say the good is actually dealing with immigration. So he came in office. Joe Biden's administration had the border open, essentially the southern border open for the most part, and people were pouring in every day. That's just the reality. I know people like to deny it, but it's just true. He came in, he said, okay, with executive order, we're going to close the border. And let's just imagine for a minute Donald Trump had more manners. He was better spoken. He was more like a Barack Obama from a mannerism perspective, and did some of the same things he's doing now. People would probably either not know about it or they would consider it to be good. At the end of the day, closing the border is just normal. Only in America that we feel almost like everybody is entitled to just be here. So the only thing I feel that, with immigration, it's almost a thing where we've almost turned black people in this country, and I always get a little bit weird when black people get wrapped up in immigration, because we turn it into this, we're all
It's a,
brown and
it's an R issue.
yeah, it's our issue. Like we turn it into like, oh, we need to be frontline. So I see people marching and I see people getting mad, and I'm like, well, the border is not supposed to be open. If you go in and you travel, you've been to other countries, right? So if you go to another country and you come in, just pop in, walk through the border, or you overstay your visa. I'm a guy. I'm a first generation Ghanaian, right? Grew up in Illinois, in America, right? But when I went to Ghana for the first time, I had to get a visa. I couldn't just hop on a plane and just go to Accra. When I get to Accra, they want to see your visa. I got a
Yeah,
3-month visa now,
Visa and that yellow card, bro.
and a yellow card. Yes, a yellow card. Absolutely. And it's like, I go there for the first time as an adult, and I have a 3-month visa. Now, if I just decide to stay, I don't know what would have happened, right? But they do have laws.
You know what's gonna happen, bro.
Well, I'm being, for the
I
most
don't know
part,
how they trace stuff the way they do over there, but I heard them cats don't play, bro.
they don't play. They don't play.
Yeah,
And
which
they're
is your point, right?
and to my point, and Ghana is a nicer country. God forbid you go to another country and you just show up and decide you're going to stay. So I'm just like, in America, it's almost like we feel, and when I say we, I mean black and
I
brown
got you.
people, we have
Yeah,
this thing where we feel like, oh, well, they should be here. I've had debates with people where they're like, I said, well, what do you think should happen to all the people that just came in the past like past 3 years? Well, they should just stay. They should just be here. And I'm like, well, no, that doesn't make sense, bro, because at the end of the day, following immigration law, closing the borders is something that every country does. So I think differentiating or detangling what's right and what's wrong is where I say, okay, well, it's not a bad thing to say, well, Trump did do the right thing with immigration. If so, for example, if Kamala Harris had become president and she did nothing with the border and people had kept coming in, I think that would have been wrong as a president. It just would have
Do
been
you do
wrong.
you, do you think that it's okay for him to invite white South Africaners? What they call them? Africa. What do they
Yeah.
call them?
You know,
Do you think it's so? Do you think it's okay for him to say that white people in South Africa are being slaughtered and we're bringing them here, which is false information that has been debunked several times? And so, like, let's
so
just take this dude's comments about Somalis, right? Like, this dude just made probably the most horrendous comments
well,
about all Somalian people.
before we do Somalia, real
Yeah.
quick, I just want to
Yep.
address the South African thing. So the South
Yeah.
African thing, I do agree. I agree, but what I mean by that, we have this black and brown loyalist idea to say, okay, the South Africans, it was like, I don't know, it might have been, I don't know, 6,000 or 9,000 of them. And then the people coming from the south of the border, there's different arguments, but it was anywhere between 10 and 20 million. So I agree with you. You might say, okay, well, why would he allow South Africans to come? Okay, I understand that, but I'm like, at the same time, the numbers are completely not even comparable. So,
They're not. They're not
so,
comparable. But my point is just dealing with immigration the exact same way. And I'll quote Brandon Johnson. When 37,000 Ukrainians got sent here, there was no uproar in the black community at all. You know why? Because they didn't put the Ukrainians in the black community. They put the Ukrainians in other areas, north side and suburbs, right? But
sure,
nobody had a thing to say about 37,000 something Ukrainians coming here at all, right? Nobody had anything to say. And
right,
that was done by the Biden administration, right?
right,
So that's clear. Nobody had anything to say. When we talk about, see, it's easy to talk about Chicago being a sanctuary city or New York being a sanctuary city versus the Republican governor who shipped them to these places because they're um because they're sanctuary cities, right? Texas took money that the government gives them to facilitate ensure and securing the borders for those. They get money for those immigrants who are coming across to keep them contained and get them back across. But that governor took that money and just shipped them folks to Chicago, to Boston, to Minnesota, I think, and to New York, right? And California. Like, you chartered a plane to California for these folks. However, them folks got there in California. But it's easier to point the finger at the cities that are welcoming as opposed to the people who are facilitating the instead of, if he could put them on a bus, he could have turned them right back around across that border. As far as I'm concerned, if he could put them on a plane, he could have turned them right back around that border. No, thank you, United States government, for your money. I appreciate it, but we're not going to take care of these folks. We're going to send them to those cities that are
well,
doing it.
well, think about this though. Here's the issue though. See, the people who live in Texas, the border towns. So when people are coming over in Texas and California, I mean, they're the ones that are bearing the brunt of this. So it's not like it just started for them, you know. And the thing about the sanctuary cities, you know, I think that Greg Abbott, bust them out of just frustration, because if you live, I never lived in a border state. I've never dealt with it. But if you live in a border state and you see your country, your president is not keeping the border closed, I would be mad. So for instance, like I tell people all the time, I don't know of anywhere, any country where you could have millions of people just coming in. I just
Land of the free, baby, home of the brave.
well, well that well that, exactly.
We the big American melting pot. Like, that's
But
the thing that makes America America, right?
of
It's the
course,
melting pot of the world.
but you can't absorb that. The reality is
I agree.
you can't absorb that many people. If you could absorb that many people and it wasn't a problem, then I tell people, then why did Barack deport people? Why didn't he just keep the 3-4 million people that he deported? If that's the case, why would they not be able to stay and
Resources.
naturalize all those people, right?
Yeah.
So what I say to black people when it comes to immigration is that um And I have the founders of Chicago Flip Red. They've been on this program a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah. I thought you got to connect me with them people, bro.
So they coming back on next week. Now, here's the thing,
When?
huh?
When?
They coming back on Monday, 2 days from now.
Yeah, yeah. You
But
tap me into that, bro.
but
I'm gonna be watching.
here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Here's my thing. So if you look at the black people in the country, like you said earlier, they didn't put everybody. They didn't put the Ukrainians in the black neighborhood. They put all the people who came south of the border. They put them in the black neighborhoods. So I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't understand anybody getting mad about immigration outside of what you're saying. The treatment of people. That there's definitely cases and situations where ICE is heavy-handed or Donald Trump's rhetoric is heavy-handed with immigration. But I say on the flip side, the question is, how did we get to this point to begin with? Because before there was a Donald Trump, I don't remember, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, and I've asked other people. I don't remember a time where America had 10 million, 20 million people pouring from the south of the border. So immigration is always an issue, but
Always.
it got out of control under the Biden administration. It got out of control. And again, going back to Barack Obama, obviously we have a certain level of correction that we gonna do. Even with the great Barack Obama, there's a certain level of correction when it comes to people sneaking into the country. He gonna get you out, and he did. So I'm just like, it's nothing new as far as the Trump administration dealing with immigration. Just the mere fact of them dealing with immigration, not necessarily how they're doing it. To your point, I agree, but some people are mad that they're dealing with it as if it's something new. And I'm like, it's not new. It's not anything new. Also, I'm like, what do you think happens when you absorb that many people? They come into
Yeah,
the same
resources.
neighborhoods, and we're complaining. We're complaining we don't have resources. Chicago, to me, Brandon Johnson is a mess, in my opinion.
Hold up now. You ain't gonna be talking about my branding now. You get off my branding, brother. You ain't gonna be messing with my
Okay,
mayor.
okay, all right.
Get off my mayor,
So,
bruh.
so here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know what? Here's the thing. This is just from my observation. So I would say
Yeah.
that I don't know how you and this is from Chicago citizens. You know what I'm saying? So right now in Chicago, and I want to get to the Somalians in Minnesota because that's a great point. I just did a video on that recently, but
Yeah,
Chicago.
we get back to them. We get back to them.
So let's
That's
talk
we
about
on
Chicago.
Chicago
You're,
now.
you're in Chicago, so you know what? Here's the thing that I find interesting, and you can just tell me after I lay these points out. So Chicago, for one, as a city, has not been balanced for a long time. The deficit is $1 billion. It's kind of crazy. Now, Illinois is struggling, so now they've raised property taxes about 34 to 40% from what I understand. In certain towns it's went up 40%, 50%, right? Then right, so property taxes are up.
No. Go higher, bro.
It's more than that.
40%. Yeah, that's a low ball,
That's
bro.
a low ball. There you go. So 60%. Whatever. The property taxes have gone up more than 50% for a lot of people in Chicago. Then you have the fact that he's trying to do a corporate head tax. So he wants to do a corporate head tax, $126 per employee. So they were just talking about Jewel. Everybody, if you in Chicago, you know Jewel Osco is grocery store like Kroger or anywhere,
Yeah.
or if you're out here, ShopRite.
Yeah.
It's the main grocery store. So they were just talking about how that would cost Jewel like $7 million just to employ people. So now let's look at this. Chicago is not like the services have gotten better, and then we argue. I had a conversation with someone about the crime in Chicago, and everybody's trying to be like, well, crime is down, and they were hitting you with this. Well, Alabama has higher crime, and Memphis, Tennessee has higher crime per capita. I said,
They
cool,
do.
yeah, they look per capita per 100,000 people. Now Chicago, though, what I always tell people, Chicago has 2.7, almost 3 million people, but a lot of the crime is also concentrated. So you have your governor Pritzker, who goes walking along the lakefront at 6 a.m. talking about how safe Chicago is, right? It's so safe. But what do I see? I see
Don't
someone
get me started on that dude.
putting a hatchet. They put a hatchet through the Rolex store on Michigan Avenue. I see the shooting in front of Chicago Theater. When I see the Foot Locker ransacked on 35th. Like my thing is that, and I'm gonna land my plane here. My thing is
It's
that
cool. Don't keep going, bro. It's
I
good.
think you look at crime. To me, people can talk about, oh yeah, crime is down from 2023. Cool, all that's cool. But at the end of the day, to me, you look at where crime is happening. So for me, I remember I haven't lived in Chicago in 20 years, but I remember um, being everywhere downtown was not a place you worried about getting shot. Downtown wasn't a place where people brought a hatchet and broke into the store on Michigan Avenue or State Street. That was not happening 20 years ago. Like downtown, if you in the Wild Hunters, you in K-Town or whatever, in any Inglewood, if you in certain neighborhoods, we all know the certain neighborhoods that are worse than others. So shit might go down, right? But
Period.
no one is thinking, oh, I'm on Michigan Avenue. No one's thinking I'm on State or Wabash and I'm gonna get shot. It just wasn't something that came into my mind. So my thing is that if crime is better or if crime is down and it's safer, why are things happening where they're happening? If and it's just an example, if the city is being run correctly, why the deficit, and why are you now trying to, rather than attracting businesses, you're trying to make businesses pay just to exist from a corporate head tax, and he's getting a lot of pushback. So
So
and
let me
then
jump in here,
and
brother.
to top it off, the cherry on
Oh, don't
top.
put the cherry on.
The
Don't put the
reason why you
cherry on.
got the Chicago Flips red is because you also have all the money, and Brandon Johnson, um, he testified to how much money that was spent on migrants. He testified, and it was around, my math might be off, but it's somewhere between $600 million or something like that.
No,
I could be
no,
off,
no. Your
but
math is off by maybe 2 million, bro. No, I think it was. I want to say. I think I could be wrong. Let me look it up real quick. But I think the number was 487.
okay. Well, we'll take that. So you have people saying, okay, you spent money, and this ties back to immigration, right? So you spent money on people who snuck over here, yet you're going to raise my taxes 60 to 70% now because you need more money.
No,
If
you were right.
if
638.
How much was it?
638.
638 million. Yes. So because I remember he testified, and so did Eric Adams, about New York. They spent 800 million in New York. Brandon Johnson tried to pretend like he didn't know the number because they were asking him.
Yeah, but I'm not mad at them. Them rude idiots, especially that little idiotic brother up there sitting in a whatever he was sitting in
Byron
Congress.
Donalds.
Hmm?
Byron Donalds.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
but here's the point. The point at
Fucking
the end of
Mark.
the day is that, here's the thing. At the end of the day, the money is, those are resources that got spent, and then we now go into the budget for the next fiscal year, and who has to pay for that? The citizens. So
Yeah,
I'm like, how can you not be mad and then you want to go march about immigration? It's just a weird thing, and then we blame it all on Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not managing Chicago. So
yeah.
you tell me your point of view.
So it's a few things. One, and I think one of the things that people don't like Brandon Johnson is because he's probably the blackest mayor this city has had who is pro-black and pro-black people.
Hmm.
Now, people say he's not pro-black because, again, of the migrant situation. So where he gets no sympathy from me, when you run for mayor, hey, you got to eat it, dog. It don't matter who was just like Trump always want to blame Biden or Obama for something. Like, nah, bro, you took the office. It's your show now. You can't talk about what other folks did, right? He can't talk about what Mayor Lightfoot did. I will
Right.
acknowledge this. When Brandon Johnson took office, there were migrants living in police stations,
Mm-hmm.
traveling back and forth to work every day, passing two police stations. I saw it. They were outside, inside, some of the worst conditions, put our police officers in harm's way. Thankfully, nothing ever happened to a police officer in those spaces. He had to clean that up. So it was either ship them back to Mexico or Venezuela. They came, they traveled, right? So where are you going to send them? It's either ship them, spend money shipping them back, or do something to get them out of police stations so police officers can get back to doing their jobs of policing and not babysitting. He had to take action and do something about that, right?
Mhm.
That's clear. The second piece about when we talk about the city budget and the financing, I think you're spot on. Chicago's been in a deficit since Daley was in office.
Right.
That's why taxes and things keep getting high. I was looking at my water bill 2004, $68. My water bill is almost $190 a month.
Wow. Yeah.
And when they put the meters here, it could jump $500. My sister-in-law's meter, when they put the meters in, her water bill jumped from like $70 to like $600
Jeez.
when they put the meters in. So it's easy to talk about 638 million that was spent on migrants. And when black people come out complaining about it, my question is, well, where were you before this money got spent? Where were you asking, where's your need? What do you need money for?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the ultimate question I would ask. And I'm not saying that this money should have went to them. I don't know where the money came from. Did the money come from the government? Doubtful. The money came from Chicago taxpayers. Then yeah, he owes a burden to Chicago. That's things he's got to answer for, right? I think the thing is, Brandon Johnson is so intelligent, and he's telling people and he's telling reporters, I'm doing everything within my power that the citizens of Chicago have empowered me to do, just like they empowered every other mayor. Rahm Emanuel was a snake. Mayor Daley, when he shut down the projects, these folks knew what they were doing, man.
Mm-hmm.
They knew what they were doing. So it's easier to talk about, oh man, they put the migrants in the black communities. That did happen. But let's talk about the landlords. The building that they raided, I used to live in, bro, at 7500 South Shore Drive, where they had the helicopters drop down.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in that building, right? And I'm just gonna say this: that building was dope back in the day. I don't know what it is now. Just want to name that. I wasn't living in no slum, bro. That's all I'm saying. But
yeah,
I say that to say,
yeah, I know that area very well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's talking about. They could only put migrants where landlords were willing to take them in.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about some of that 638 million that got spent, if they were giving some of these dudes, these landlords, 13,000, not for an apartment, if they were giving them actually 13,000 per head or 8,000 per head, these cats raked in the dough.
Yeah, sure.
So it's easy to talk about them being in our communities versus the people who own the property in the South Shore area, which is either predominantly Asian owned, or it's either Asian owned or it's white owned.
Right.
So they took the money. They took the money grab. When problems and complaints about that building started escalating, that's when the raid happened. Because them folks had been there for a minute. That's when the raid happened. Because the judge had some injunctions against the property owner,
right?
And
I
things
heard about
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Right? So they housed them. When we talk about, it's easier to talk about the $638.7 million. It's harder to talk about the $1.14 billion that Chicago taxpayers have paid out between 2008 and 2024 for police brutality.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? It's like we could talk about the things that are impacting the city of Chicago. Personally, I think trying to do a corporate tax is asinine. I think it's a bad move. But if I know I'm only going to be a one-term mayor, I'm going to try to pull all the triggers that I can, which is Trump, his last term, hopefully, in office is what he's going to do. But at the end of the day, a corporate tax, to me, is an internal tariff. So we've got tariffs, against China, and the consumer's going to eat those tariffs. Like that, we already know that. If you tax corporate, two things are going to result from that. We're going to pay for it, or they're going to leave, and we're going to pay for the unemployment.
Yep.
At a higher level.
Yep. You got that
right. So I don't think it's a smart move. I think what needs to happen, and this is something that Mace Jackson talked about when he was on the radio a lot. Do you know that if we tax the financial district a nickel on every dollar, just a nickel on every dollar, we would have more money than Chicago would ever need to raise taxes again. But that's the financial district. And stakeholders not going to have you taking a nickel off of every dollar. So you
No.
think you moving 40 trillion through the stock market? Take a nickel off of every dollar off 40 trillion,
Yeah, that's
right?
not happening.
But I'm just but again, but that's how the laws are written. Well, we can't tax these markets because if we do, they're like, well, the Board of Trade can pack up and move anywhere they want to.
Well, to that point though, Tony, I think that and I think this is part of the conversation that I think I'm not giving Trump full recognition of it, but I think the era that America is in, I think people have to reckon with a city like Chicago and say, what's going on in the city that I live in? Why are you guys not able to balance the budget? Just from a generic standpoint, right? If I live in a city or a town and
Mm-hmm.
I have a mayor, my expectation is that you should be able to balance the budget. The federal government has the same issue, no doubt, right? You have tax money coming in, and it's complicated as it seems. It's also simplistic too, because the federal government takes in tax money, right? They take in a
Yep.
certain amount, and every year they spend a couple trillion more than what they have, right? So any town or city takes in a certain amount of tax revenue, and it's just like your own house, your own income. You have to balance it at some point. So the federal government runs at a deficit. They do what they do. They sell treasury notes and sell debt or whatever, and they
Just
run a
print the money, man.
cool.
Print
And
the
they
money.
print money. But
Print the money.
in a town, in a city, it's the same issue. So I think the question to me is that yes, I agree with you as far as everything you said. And yeah, you can't blame Brandon Johnson for everything. He didn't create Chicago. Chicago been had these issues for a long time for people
Yeah.
who don't know. However, the goal to your point about businesses, I think there's also the conversation as to whether the rich are paying their fair share. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I think all of that is part of the larger conversation. Are the rich paying their fair share or paying enough? There's definitely room for that conversation. But are cities running efficiently? I don't think a lot of cities are running efficiently. And the shift in America right now is crazy because there was a time where you didn't have business districts in like the Austin, right? Austin is big, so Texas, for example, places like Tennessee, Kentucky, there's places that, corporations, because of technology, they don't have to be in Chicago. So the idea of doing a corporate tax, there are no corporations fighting to have their headquarters in Chicago. They don't have to be there. They don't have to be. A lot of New York is still New York, but even New York struggles with that issue. So you have to be able to allow or make, a business friendly city. So there was a time where like Detroit, Motown went through that. Detroit was the place, and it got to a place that became desolate especially after the 2008 collapse. But people don't have to be in these certain
Before that.
cities. So
Yeah.
what's happening now is you have a migration of businesses into these, I would call, kind of obscure places.
Metaverse, man.
Huh?
Metaverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's digital.
Yeah,
I work. There's a company. I was sitting at a meeting with an executive at a cybersecurity summit, and this dude told me he was like, "Oh, we got 80 employees. We all work from home.
yeah,
80 employees. They have no phones. They only communicate through email
yeah.
intentionally.
They own
And
Microsoft
so,
Teams and
yeah, you can, you
like,
can, yeah,
so
you can. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying to your point, like they don't even have to be, and we haven't even dug into AI yet. We haven't even talked about AI, but
Yeah.
just as far as the way corporations work. So I think that some of these politicians, and I'm talking about Brandon Johnson, mayors, for instance, especially in big cities, you cannot manage these cities like this is we're Chicago, they don't have to be there. They do not have to be there. I mean, you'll find where you start losing businesses, and the problem is you can't just tax these businesses. Yes, you're taxing because you need the money. Of course, it's a way to generate revenue, but it's also a way to make the business leave. So just to your point, you said a minute ago, yes, you'll pay for it either in Jewel. If they pay $7 million to just exist in Chicago, then everything's going to cost more. When you go
I
to,
mean, yeah, no corporation, no smart corporation is going to even stay.
they're not going to
I,
stay.
I, I wouldn't
Yeah,
stay. I would pack up and I would pack up and leave.
they're going
Right.
to
So
leave. So to your point,
I think,
you're going to pay in jobs. So
yeah.
that's bad leadership. And I think on top of that, New York has an issue, and I'll bet Chicago has the same issue. Even when it
Uh-huh.
comes to the housing issues, as far as building property, building homes, the process of bureaucracy through zoning. I mean, for example, I have a good friend of mine, a real estate agent who deals with bank owned properties in Philadelphia. She was telling me how, for instance, if you were buying a bank owned property, trying to get a deal to buy a bank owned property, rehab it. So let's say that you bought the property and you're trying to close. You can close. Some of these properties don't close for a year because they have not changed the deed. They have not changed the deed from the person who got foreclosed on to the bank. There's just
Hmm.
administrative things that move in a way that are so lethargic and slow
Absolutely.
that people don't even realize. And there are things that deter business. So what's happening in certain places, Texas, for example, Florida, they make it business friendly and they make it where, okay, we're not going to just tie you up and pretend like you have to be here. We want you to come here. So what's happening in America is that. So I think that's a part of why you see Chicago, New York, um, Detroit has turned around a lot. But I think that California, my God, for example,
I mean, bro, like, I mean, these are major, major, major big cities, right? Brandon Johnson, and I'm just being straight up. I've listened to this guy enough. I've been around him enough to know he's a very intelligent man.
it's true.
He's not a dummy by any means at all. I think he has a listening problem. And when you don't listen to the people, what made him potentially a one-term mayor was this. There was an opportunity, and he lost his op. This was his Kamala nail in the coffin. Kamala nail in the coffin for me. The people of Chicago wanted him to hear our voice, and all he had to do was put a referendum on the ballot that talked about how do you think Chicago should respond to the migrant crisis. When he did not allow that to go on the election ballot, he set Chicago off, and he lost a whole lot of people supporting him.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say this. I was at a session where he was in being asked questions. He was asked a real particular specific question. Mayor Johnson, and I'm sitting in there, my wife is with me, my daughter's with me. He was at my church. This is when Trump saw it on the news and he, had a got Trump, he see it on the news when he talk about hired all these black people and Trump is like, well, he can't do that, but whatever. Later, dude, you do it, we can do it, whatever. But the question that was asked was, Mayor Johnson, why does it seem like when a police officer is shot in Chicago, that an arrest is made instantly and all the entire force is Johnny on the spot, 100% behind it. But when a citizen is killed, it drags on for months, weeks, years. Now that's a plain question, bro. That's not a difficult question.
Yeah. Softball.
All around the mulberry bush.
He talked around the block, huh?
To a point, my daughter was like, "Is he gonna answer the question?" So you can't stop these young people, bro. They go. So people around her started laughing, but at that point, after about 7 minutes of ranting about nothing, people started getting up and leaving, and that's when Pastor just ended it because he like, I gave you an opportunity to, I gave you an opportunity to answer the questions my people gave me. He danced around that question, but what I did hear about 4 weeks later was that question came up and he had an answer for it.
What was his answer?
He talked about what they're doing, having more detectives on the force, more promotions that could lead to more detectives being promoted to be able to put them on that type of investigative work. He had a good answer for it.
Okay.
So at least he adjusted. That's why I said he's intelligent. Like, he may not listen to people. I think he takes in those things that may be political fire and deals with them. But I think in terms, his biggest mistake, bro, I'm gonna tell you this, and talk to people in Chicago. Talk to Chicago Red. Ask them how upset were the people of Chicago when he did not allow that referendum to go onto the ballot about how Chicago should deal with migrants. Because the only thing Black Chicago wanted was to be heard. I get your defense. I understand your defense talking about the Ukrainians who came here, well, all the money that came to support them, and nobody said a word. Well, you know, you didn't put Ukrainians on 75th and South Shore Drive.
Right.
Because had you done that, well, and we know why you didn't put Ukrainians on 75th and South Shore Drive. Just like you got that Ukrainian woman who got killed on that train in New York.
Right.
It would have, if it happened over here, it would have been the same thing.
Yeah.
I do think you are absolutely right. There can be no raising of taxes in this city. Now, I don't blame Mayor Johnson for crime. I don't blame any politician for crime,
Right.
especially when it comes to that of our young people.
Right.
I lost a young man down at the Bean a few years ago, Shondell Holiday. Shout out to his mom.
Yeah. R.I.P.
That's a parenting issue.
Yeah.
However, I am 10 toes down. The biggest failure of this administration is not protecting the Chicago Transit Authority. There have been too many robberies on the trains.
Yeah.
There have been too many murders on the trains. There have been sexual assaults on the trains. There have been people pushed in front of trains. There have been people jumped on and stabbed. That, my brother, is 100% unacceptable. So if you're going to raise taxes in my city, then you need to come with a list of everything that you're doing, and the citizens need to see that list, and they can say, yo, bro, you missing 15 points on here, and 5 of them are safety issues on Chicago public transportation. That is absolutely unacceptable. For a woman to get set on fire?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had guests in town from other universities I was entertaining in a leadership program while I was here. It was utterly embarrassing. So yeah, you need to do something. Don't raise taxes if services are not going to come with it. Right? They're looking at, I heard, raising the garbage tax, the pickup tax, increasing that fee. Like, fees are going to happen. Dude, with the amount of red light cameras we have in this city, for the 99 year deal that I think it was either Daley or Rahm Emanuel did. That 90, who signs a 99-year camera deal, bro?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Even 50 years, okay, but 100? We're not going to even be around 100 years to see that whole thing come to pass. But so I think that's the biggest thing. Safety is an issue on public transportation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major stain on his mayoral term. But I still stand on it. I think Brandon Johnson is he's a sharp politician because he knows the game. If you listen to this guy in interview, he's very strategic, man. What I don't like is that you have reporters now who will talk to him and they would never talk to Rahm Emanuel or Daley or Lori Lightfoot that way. See, there's something about a Black man in power, especially when he's on the liberal side of things. There's something about a Black man in power who shows you intelligence. And not saying he's got the best judgment, because I told you, I believe he has a listening problem.
Well,
right?
I thought that was extremely prolific of you saying that, because that was the most accurate way where you're giving him his props. Because I don't think he's a dummy, but I think it's prolific that you said that he has a listening problem. That is a very big issue.
Yeah.